everyone to please stand for the invocation. Remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance and our national anthem, please. This time we'll have our invocation. Lord, we thank you for this day, this opportunity to come here tonight. Lead us in decisions that are made, provide us wisdom, make us ever mindful of the needs of others. In your holy name we pray. Amen.
Color guard for march. Color guard hope. Please join me in the pledge of allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You may be seated, but I'll ask the Eaton, Ms. Kempler, is there a microphone? If you would have your students introduce themselves, their name and the grade they're in.
My name is John Hutt, and I'm in 5th grade.
My name is Owen Desmond, and I'm in fifth grade.
My name is Zach Bear, and I'm in 5th grade.
My name is Cole Stearns, and I'm in 5th grade.
My name is Calvin Brinker, and I'm in 5th grade.
My name is Caitlin Fall, and I'm in 5th grade.
My name is Jennifer Santa, and I'm in the 5th grade.
My name is Madison Sutton, and I'm in the 5th grade.
My name is Brenna Abel, and I'm in the 5th grade.
My name is Caitlin Paris, and I'm in the 5th grade.
My name is Gracie Seaman, and I'm in the 5th grade.
My name is Clara Hicks, and I am in the 5th grade.
My name is Olivia Phelps, and I'm in the 5th grade.
Hello, my name is Elena Grumman, and I am in the 5th grade.
My name is Kira Eldridge, and I'm in 5th grade.
My name is Emma Massinio, and I'm in the 5th grade.
My name is Ella Faye, and I'm in the 5th grade.
My name is Becca Dickens, and I'm in 5th grade.
My name is Shannon Loper, and I'm in the 5th grade.
My name is Bailey Hudson, and I'm in the 5th grade.
My name is Layla Boynton, and I'm in the 5th grade.
My name is Emerson Sotier, and I'm in 5th grade.
My name is Sarai Gloom, and I'm in 5th grade.
My name is Shanna Hart, and I'm in 5th grade.
My name is Katie Crouch, and I'm in 5th grade.
My name is Grayson Upchurch, and I'm in 5th grade.
My name's Anthony Marty. I'm in 5th grade.
My name is Evan Broder, and I'm in the 5th grade.
My name is Emma Fletcher, and I'm in 5th grade.
And I'm Carly Kanzler. I'm the music teacher at Eaton Elementary.
Thank you for being with us tonight. Outstanding job. Mr. Bilsey, would you please come forward and introduce the troupe that's here tonight, and anything you'd like to tell us about this group of young men?
I'll let them introduce themselves.
I'm Brandon Kelly. I go to Pender Early College, and I'm in the 11th grade, and I'm life.
My name's Adam Vitt. I'm going to 8th grade, and I am first class.
My name is Jaron Jans, and I'm in 8th grade, and I'm a star.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Bilsey. Also would like to recognize the principal of Eaton Elementary, Heather Byers. Ms. Byers, oh, there you are. Thank you for being here tonight.
Nice Exodus. That took care of our audience.
Yep.
They don't want to stay. Y'all don't want to stay?
Ms. Adams, would you call the roll, please?
Donald S. Hayes.
Here.
Jeanette S. Nichols.
Here.
Janice A. Kavanaugh.
Here.
Tammy J. Cobo.
Here.
Lisa Eastet.
Here.
Derek G. Hickey.
Here.
Edward B. Higgins.
Here.
Thank you. Item 2 is approval of the agenda. Any additions or changes?
Yet, 2 changes. Under superintendent's report, we will add a budget update. And under consensus, we will delete item B, the budget items. State budget came out so late, we're going to move those until the 19th interim meeting. So we'll give you an update on the budget, but you won't do any actual budget approvals until the meeting on the 19th.
Thank you. Motion to approve?
So moved.
Questions? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's approved. Item 3 is approval of the minutes. Item A, regular meeting minutes from May the 13th, 2014. Would you like to do these all at once or individually? Any objection or doing them all at once? Motion, okay, item B is regular meeting minutes from July the 1st, 2014. Item C, special meeting minutes from July the 15th, 2014. And item D is the interim meeting minutes from July the 17th, 2014.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? They are approved. Item 4 is recognition.
Have one recognition this evening, and that recognition is for Ms. Caroline Cook and Ms. Miranda Lancaster. These young ladies have been awarded the Board of Education Teaching Scholarship. They both graduated from Laney High School this past June and were participants in the Laney Teacher Cadet Program, which is taught by Mrs. Rochelle Dombrowski. Caroline has been accepted into the Appalachian Community of Education Scholars at Appalachian State University, and Miranda has been accepted to the Watson College of Education at UNCW. We would like to say a special thank you to your parents, if they're here, your principal, Mr. Al O'Brien, and to Mrs. Dombrowski. Carolyn and Miranda, we are so very proud of you for winning this prestigious scholarship, and please join me in recognizing these lovely young ladies. Thank you and congratulations. Thank you, Mr. Williams.
Next item on the agenda is item 5, call to the audience. Concerning agenda items, we've had no one to sign up, so we'll go to item 6, administrative personnel. Item A, administrative recommendations, appendix A. Dr. Markley.
All right, we have 3 assistant principal recommendations tonight. We will start with the Rachel Freeman Elementary School of Engineering. The recommendation is Ms. Sonia Oates. Ms. Oates currently is a 4th grade teacher at Gregory. Previously served as a teacher assistant at Pine Valley. Her contract will be effective from June 30th until June 30th, 2016. She received her master's from Gardner-Webb and her bachelor's degree from NC Central.
Second.
Comments, questions? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
And Ms. Oates is here, so
approved.
if she would stand up. Did you bring anybody with you? Sonia, anybody you want to introduce with you out there?
Introduce us to that gentleman behind you. He looks vaguely familiar. Thank you.
The second recommendation is for Forest Hills Global Elementary School, and that is Miss Mandy James. Ms. James was an administrative intern at Sunset Park last year and previously served as an elementary teacher at Stocks Elementary in Tarboro, which is and at the Pactolius School in Greenville and the Belleville Elementary School in Leland. Her contract will run until June 30th, 2016. She received her master's degree from East Carolina and her bachelor's degree from UNCW.
Comments, questions? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's approved.
Ms. James? Anybody back there with you?
My husband, Brandon James, is here. My current principal now, Beth Greenwood, and
We also have a last recommendation is Ms. Kate Taylor, assistant principal at Pine Valley Elementary. Ms. Taylor is currently serving as a language art teacher and mentor at Myrtle Grove Middle. Previously served as a school director at the Wilmington Academy, and her contract will run until June 30th, 2016. Ms. Taylor received both a master's and bachelor's degree from UNCW.
I'll move for approval.
Second.
Oh, any comments, questions? Those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's approved. Thank you.
Kate?
This is my daughter Beth. She'll be a first grader, and my principal, Rebecca Opry.
We also have one other administrative move that doesn't require board approval we want to recognize tonight, and that is Miss Lauren Nalepa, who is going to be moving from Rachel Freeman to Murray Middle School. Ms. Nalepa? Looks like you got some folks there with you.
this is my husband, Paul, and my sons, Gabriel and Jacob, who attend Parsley Elementary. And we're just big supporters of their mom and all the moves that I made throughout the county, so thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Markley. Item 7, Head Start. Item A, Head Start funding for buses. Appendix B, Dr. Smith.
Yes, we are asking for the board's approval to request additional funding for our Head Start program. We would like to purchase 3 new buses, one having a wheelchair lift and 280 star seats that will serve as restraints for our children who will be riding the buses that are under the age of 5. And would ask for your approval for this recommendation.
Move for approval.
Second.
Any comments, questions?
I guess my question is, what happens if we don't get this funding?
So that
What happens if we don't get this funding? What's our transportation? I mean, how do we plan on doing this?
We received buses that were transferred from the other grant.
Well, I understand, and from
but
reading what you included, they are insufficient and
They are. We won't be
unsafe.
We won't be able to transport as many, and I guess we would request it in next year's local budget, wouldn't we?
Yes, you have to.
So this year, I mean, when do we expect these buses to come if we put this request in? I mean, we don't expect the buses to show up next week, right?
I think we're gonna use an existing spare bus, in the meantime, once we purchase the Star Seats. And what we were planning to do, and we've already talked to the Head Start folks about this, we're using local money temporarily for the Star Seats, because it's more of it's a required purchase. You have to have those seats, and the ones that that were transferred from the grant were outdated. And so the grant, if it received, would reimburse us.
The way it's been run before was they had a lot of central locations where parents had to bring the students to central locations. Then when they transport them to the school, that's what we have to do this year too. Have more central locations that parents have to bring from one point and take them to school. The hope is to get additional buses, we can do more door-to-door pickup for the children versus the parents having to take them to a central location, particularly since a lot of these parents may not have transportation. So we've got a plan right now to get them to school. It's not the door-to-door service we'd like to offer. Plus, we do not have a handicap bus or a wheelchair bus to transport these child in wheelchairs. So they're kind of opting two things: do more door-to-door services since children are so young, as well as go to pick up children who are in wheelchairs and transport them to the program also.
Was this part of the original grant that we applied for, or, I mean, what was the plan initially? I don't recall it
Well,
being.
we assumed the buses that would be transferred from the existing programs would be sufficient, but once they were evaluated, they were insufficient.
There were actually 5 buses. 2 of them are fairly current, only a couple years old. One of them is 1994 Ford. It still operates, but it's difficult to the bus. 2 of the buses were more like minivan type buses, they're very small, low capacity. They also were missing some safety tools such as stop arms and those kind of things. That one of the buses did not operate in over a year. So, and the last thing is they're gasoline powered. We do not want to use gasoline powered vehicles to transport students. We'd rather use diesel because if there had to be a fire, these kids are all in Star Seats in the buses, so it takes long to get them off the bus in case of emergency. Diesel has a much higher ignition point than gasoline does, so it's a safer way to transport students. But again, 3 of the 5 buses we got, one is a 1994, the other 2 are mini buses, they don't carry that many students, so there are a lot of safety issues going on with that also. So right now, our plans are to use the 2 newer full-size buses as well as the Ford, which is a full-size bus, and then transport kids to central locations to the school until we get these additional buses, kind of like the other schools, the other groups doing part of the state.
I guess the concern that I have is right out of the gate, we're now talking about using funds outside of the initial grant process to supplement some of these things for Head Start. And it was my understanding when we were presented with this that outside of some of the in-kind donations that our school system was going to provide, this was going to be a self-funding venture. So why was this not assessed prior to our grant application? Or was it assessed?
Well, we had not looked at the part of this category. Basically, we can operate just like they operate and start off. We're not going to use any internal funds except for the Star Seats. When we started looking at Star Seats are supposed to be dated, and that should not be more than 5 years old. For whatever reason, the Star Seats they were using had no dates on them. So we could operate just like they did with 3 vehicles. In talking to Head Start, they recommended we ask the additional vehicles so we can do more door-to-door transfer versus central pickup locations, as well as be able to transport some children who have handicaps and need to be in a wheelchair.
We'll make this request with the anticipation that Head Start's going to approve this. They approve when a new grantee takes over. They'll approve some expenditures that are outside the grant as part of the startup of that new organization.
When could we expect to hear?
When we met with them, they said that their closeout process for the year is August and September, and this is the best time of year to ask for one-time allotment. So they would, I think they indicated within 2 or 3 weeks of us applying, we should hear back, but we never know for sure. But it would definitely be before the end of September that we would hear back.
What's the understanding of the parents who apply for the Head Start program? Is it part of the application process that they are, with the understanding that they may have to transport their children to a central location is that part of the application process? Do they understand that?
That's our plan for this year. We're not changing the transportation plan. But when we get the new buses, we can be a little more generous in terms of the pickup process.
Well, I wish we had known that when we applied for the grant, is what I'm concerned about. Because it doesn't appear that a true assessment was done as to what this was gonna cost us, and we were told when we, approved this, that this was gonna be a self-funding venture with the exception of some of the in-kind donations. And so now, right out of the gate, we've barely gotten started, and we're talking about supplementing some of the program's features. So I've got a little concern with that.
Well, I would say I don't think we have a real choice in the matter, because of course we need to transport them. It needs to be safely done. What are the Star Seats going to cost?
Star 280 or about with tax everything about $30,000.
$30,000. I mean, I do share some of Ms. Colville's concerns, and I think what I would like to see, again, I have no problem with this, and it's, we have to transport these children. We need to do it in a safe manner. But just sort of going forward, I'd like to see kind of a, since we're sitting here and we're serving kind of on two boards, one, the board for Head Start and one for the New Hanover County Board of Education, kind of a running total, just so that we know, how much we've put of, local county funds into the Head Start program going forward, just so that, again, as Ms. Colville points out, we don't lose track of, county dollars. And so right now, if I'm not mistaken, we're probably going to appropriate about $30,000.
We're actually appropriating it out of the indirect costs that Head Start pays us. So it's technically coming from their funding, but then once it's received as revenue, the board has authority of how to spend it. So we're still using money that's related to the program, but it's the indirect costs we're earning from the program is what we're using to upfront the seats.
Okay, so it's still Head Start funds. It's
Yes,
not
sir.
sort of local county
That is
education
correct.
dollars. Okay.
Okay, so when it says.
Again, it gets a little confusing.
Yeah, when it says the 288, because I think Ms. Coble brings up a good point that I was concerned about, was that the 288,912, it says federal, then applicant was the 72. I assume that was going to be our portion, but you say all that would be coming. I didn't know where the 72, how that was budgeted.
All of their grants require a match, and when we talked with them on the phone, I assumed a 25% match would have been based on, the total cost. You take 25% of it, and it would be local. But they recommended that the match be in kind as the original grant, and we're using the space that we provide as Johnson, and we already had a value on that based on the prior lease with CDI. That is what we're using as the value of the match. So it's no real dollars. It's just the value of what we're contributing locally in kind to support the program, and that was not part of our original match for the first grant.
And when we go, in terms of bus switching, what they've always done, at the meeting with Head Start, we expressed our concerns about the fact the way it's been done in the past of doing central pickups. And actually, they discussed with us the fact that we should come in and ask for additional buses. Access was not a bus to handle the handicapped students. They actually recommended to us that we go back to them and ask for additional buses so we could do more door-to-door service and less centralized pickup.
Any other questions? I think we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed.
Item 8, for information, item A, policies on for first reading. Mrs. Nichols.
We have 4 policies tonight, Mr. Hayes. The first one is a new policy, and it's going to be in the 1000 series, which is the board's responsibility. And each year, each department reviews their area of policies. And in looking at, the 1000 series, I realized many months ago that we did not have anything that would guide board members and new board members about handling complaints. And I think all of us have certainly used the common sense approach. And there have been, and there are other policies that are in the other categories that address this. So when we talked about it, we all had some really good thoughts and concerns, and I think the media kind of, not intentionally, but they misled, and we got some concerns from the community thinking that we, as the board, did not want to hear their concerns or suggestions. So we've worked on this for quite a while. Mr. Bullard has added some additional parts to it, and so and it's certainly the part that we wanted parents to know, or people who complain, that eventually, or that their names would be in the complaint, so that the person who had to address it would know to whom they needed to talk with. So, Mr. Bullard.
Well, the policy follows what has been existing practice, which says that when board members are contacted regarding complaints, the board member, realizing that the board member acts as a member of the board as a whole, instead of trying to resolve the complaint individually, should refer the person to the appropriate person, whether it be the principal, whether it be someone in the superintendent's office, to try to resolve it. And we have grievance policy and other policies in place that specify procedures and timelines, and many of them provide for an ultimate appeal or a request for appeal to a board, and this policy follows that and just makes it clear that board members, the role of the board members is to be the final decision maker in the event an appeal is brought to the board. But in the meantime, it directs the board members to assist the person in channeling their complaints through the proper process.
And we worked hard to include all the concerns that had been expressed, but if the board has additional input, we would appreciate that, because we will have a policy committee meeting on the 19th. The next policy is still in the 1000 series, and we just decided that the goals, we just say goals will be established annually so that the policy is not outdated. And we plan to work on those goals during the retreat and certainly with senior staff. The next one is graduation ceremonies, and this came to light when we noticed that some students had logos on their mortar boards, and certainly it was not, it did not take away from the ceremony, but we had a meeting with Mr. O'Brien came, Mr. McAdams came, and Dr. Holliday gave us the background history on how this policy came about. So, Dr. Holliday, if you'd like to elaborate, please.
Yes, ma'am. The policy was initiated originally back in the early 90s when there was a problem at a couple of our graduations with students wearing all sorts of things on their academic regalia, and the board felt it prudent at that time to devise a policy that limited what students wore at their graduations to their academic attire, plus the honors that they wore from their school, such as the National Honor Society stole, the different tassels and the honor cords that were given by their schools. And it was appropriate at this time, appeared to be appropriate at this time, since we haven't had any issues up till now, to reiterate and to maybe refine that just a bit to make sure that our graduation ceremonies remain dignified.
And again, if you have additional input, we would appreciate it before the 19th. The last policy is the field trip policy, and while we had it in place as a draft, we found that there had already been some additional changes. So I'm going to ask Dr. Smith if she will present the field trip policy.
Yes, the field trip policy, we wanted to give further guidance to principals about considerations when approving field trips, and added information regarding the level of disruption to the educational program and the loss of instructional time. We also wanted to make sure that parents could very easily reference the link to the out-of-country field trip procedures, and the information regarding out-of-country field trips, and also the field trip procedures in general. And then also, we have made some changes as a district. We're now using a new system, the travel tracker system, and we wanted to make sure that that information was reflected in the policy, so that anyone reading the policy was clear on where they needed to go to access those procedures and to be in alignment with the use of that system.
And those are the 4 policies that are for first reading.
Excuse me, so that's first reading, and if you have any comments or anything, you let Mrs. Nichols know, or various individuals prior to the next meeting, or just bring it up at the next meeting. Thank you, Ms. Nichols. Item B, board-sponsored field trips, Appendix D, Dr. Smith.
Yes, I wanted to bring to the board information regarding the board-sponsored field trips for this current school year. We have one new field trip that we are adding that the board is now sponsoring, which is the first grade field trip in science, forces, and motion. All other trips were trips that were provided to our students last year, and we're extremely elated that we'll be able to continue these trips for our students as well.
What is that, Forces in Motions? What is that?
Forces in Motion is a field trip that our first graders take to the Wilmington Museum, and it focuses on physics and I've not participated in the field trip, but it is gauged to present to our students in a way that first graders understand and can respond to forces and motions within our environment.
Sounds interesting. Any comments from any other board members?
It might be helpful, especially with our new teachers, if we put in parentheses where, for instance, Sea Scholars, where is that? Where is Forces in Motion? And in each category, so we know where the location is.
Yes, ma'am. We will take care of that.
Any other comments? Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Item C is the AP US History, Appendix E, with my name attached there. Let me get there.
Want me to cover that one?
Dr. Markley, if you.
Yeah. This came out as a request of some board members to look at the AP standards. We've asked Travis, our social studies person, to put together a brief presentation on those standards. Remember, Travis didn't write the standards. These are AP US History Standards, National College Board Standards. He's the messenger.
So be nice? Is that what you're saying?
Don't shoot the messenger.
Actually, traditionally, that's what happens.
Unfortunately.
For the messenger.
All right, School Board, I want to thank you for the opportunity to come up here and talk a little bit about and discuss the new AP standards. I think the place to begin is, why did we change the old standards, or why did the College Board change the old standards? And they got together with history professors and other AP US history teachers, and there was a concern that the old standards focused too much on the memorization of vast amounts of information and not developing authentic historical skills. So these experts felt like students leaving an AP US history course should be able to analyze and synthesize primary and secondary sources. They should be able to recognize reoccurring themes and concepts throughout the course, as well as their ability to construct an historical essay grounded in primary sources. Okay, thank you. I didn't realize these were going to slide for me. So anyway, throughout the course, this is additional change. There are now 7 themes that they're highlighting for students. And again, these are going to be weaved throughout the course. The first one, identity. What is the United States' national identity and how has that changed over time? Work, exchange, and technology. That is dealing with things like agriculture, manufacturing, commerce, and how has technology changed those practices. You're also looking at things like peopling, and that is moving to, from, and within the United States, and how has that changed America. Politics and power, we're dealing with what role does the local, state, and national government play in the development of the United States. America in the world, what is our participation or amount thereof, and what has been that impact upon the world? Environment and geography, how has the United States' natural environment and geography, how has that aided, how has it constrained, how has it shaped the country's development? And how has various ideas, beliefs, and culture, how have those things changed America? Now these are going to be 9 historical thinking skills that the new AP standards want to instill upon the students. And what I'm going to do is I'm just, rather than read all this out, because I know this PowerPoint was provided beforehand, but anyway, was there any questions regarding this? Particularly,
I have a question, and that is, as I read over this material, I mean, I don't have a problem with the whole concept of developing an understanding of how these things came about. But what seriously concerns me is twofold. Number one, I'm one of those who firmly believes if you don't know history, you're destined to repeat it. And there seems, I don't know what the textbook looks like, and I acknowledge I don't know exactly what the curriculum, but as I look through this, I sense that a lot of things that we would say develop the mindset of the American nation are kind of glossed over and are not being, not so much memorized. I mean, I understand the idea of memorization, but are not being addressed in a honest and true fashion. I mean, that people in this country need to take pride in this country. And I fear that some of the stuff that as I look through here, it's almost like we ought to be apologizing for some of the things we've done. And, for example, I mean, Native Americans, I mean, why did we have the relationship with Native Americans that we did? And I wonder as I look through it, are we still going to talk about the fact that on one side there was an English and a European approach to land ownership versus the Native American belief that you just went where you wanted to, and as long as you. But again, I mean, there needs to be some talking about the fact that Native Americans believed that there were boundaries, that if you crossed over, if the Iroquois crossed over into the Mohawks' territory, there was going to be a war. And I sense that a lot of that's going to be glazed over.
Well, I think you've hit the nail on the head, Ed, and that is, this summary of the change in the framework does not match what you read when you read the actual framework. And the overarching message that you get is that, as you said, America is something to be ashamed of. There's a lot that's out of context. There is no discussion of the Holocaust. There's no reference to the Holocaust in relation to our involvement in World War II. So, there is a lot that's overlooked here that, and if you want me to go through page by page, I can, because I've gone through this framework.
Oh, I have a list.
Yes.
I have a list,
Are
a
you
partial
talking about
list.
the 142 page?
Yes, sir.
I read
Yes,
the,
sir.
I read the framework. You know, it's not mentioned Pilgrims. George Washington's mentioned one time
And
in
he's
regards to his
mentioned-
closing speech.
His closing address.
Abraham
correct.
Lincoln is mentioned one time in regards to the Emancipation Proclamation. Thomas Jefferson's not mentioned. So there are 3 out of 4 people that are on Mount Rushmore that are barely mentioned. Ben Franklin's not mentioned. Martin Luther King is not mentioned. The highlights of World War II, Japanese internment camps, and changes to civil liberties. Nothing about the Greatest Generation, nothing. The Korean and Vietnam Wars are combined in one sentence. One sentence. No mention of the sacrifices that were made by our service people. Nothing. This is to me, it's completely misaligned with any kind of standards that we've ever had in regards to history. And it's a blatant attempt to rewrite it. And it's, you know,
Well,
they said the focus is, and I'm quoting this, this is to focus on key concepts to relieve the pressure on teachers to cover all possible events and details of U.S. history at a superficial level. They mentioned that there's flexibility for teachers to cover stuff. They're not going to cover stuff that they know is not going to be on the exam. They're just not going to do it. But how can you leave this stuff out? How can you leave 3 out of 4 people on Mount Rushmore out
I think when
of U.S. history?
when you control the language, you control the ideas, you control the conclusion. And this is a huge concern for me. I don't, we have almost 11,000 students in the state of North Carolina who are going to be taking this AP U.S. History course in the fall. The College Board is a private organization. They are not elected, not accountable people who have, who are essentially supplanting our history standards in our public schools. They receive funding from the State Board of Education. There is, you know, our teachers who work for the school system are teaching this material. And, you know, as a parent of children in the school system who are subjected to this kind of stuff, I am vehemently opposed to.
Well, as a former history teacher, I read the 142 pages, and I really, when I got through reading it, there's only one word that comes to my mind that can describe how I felt, and it was depressed. It was depressing. To read the points you're making, Ms. Eastep. I just found it was very depressing. But do you have the books in yet? That I'd like to see what the flexibilities are. But I think Ms. Eastep makes a very good point as far as what teachers can put in there. But if it's not on the exam.
It's not an exam, and you teach from excerpts. You don't teach from books. So of course I can take an excerpt and slant it however I want, because it's not the entire. It's like reading one chapter of a book. It's not going to tell you the whole story. So, you know, they're going to be teaching via excerpts, and they can basically supplant real history with whatever they feel like or whatever the College Board tells them to think, and that to me is a dangerous precedent to set. I'm totally appalled at this, that this was not, and that there's no discussion about it. I mean, I'm stammering. I'm so angry. After reading the standards, it's appalling.
Commander would be wondering.
Pardon?
Commander would be wondering what has happened to American history.
Well, let's let Travis finish so he can.
Yeah, good luck with that.
Okay.
Remembering that Travis is the messenger.
All right, take over, Travis.
I think you have a gist of what the board thinks.
We're not blaming you. We're not blaming you.
What happens if we don't
Not
offer
taken
AP
personally in
history?
any capacity. I completely understand. In fact, if it's okay, I think we may go straight to a point you made, I think possibly. If we can go ahead and move over. Oh, good, I've got some control here. I didn't realize that.
Well, I saw the media criticisms that you had answered, but it doesn't, all it says is, oh yeah, you can be flexible. That answers nothing to me.
Right. And I think what I would say here is, someone with a history degree reading the resulting independence movement was fueled by established colonial elites and products of the Enlightenment. That is directly related to those founding fathers. I don't personally think you could cover that objective effectively without mentioning those founding fathers.
But then you're doing the very thing that you're saying that this is supposed to stop, that you're going to cover things on a superficial level. You're doing exactly the same thing. You're supposed to guess what it is they want you to cover. And I understand that they want you to develop historical thinking skills and to be able to prove your point. I get all that. I think that's great. But if they have a true slant, you can tell from the framework that they have provided, then you know, I guess you're gonna take a stab at what they're gonna think is important. And it might not be the founding fathers, because they're not specifically mentioned.
Right, and I would say as far as the AP exam, and again, being that there's not been one completely released, you know, we're all having to make guesses based on the examples they presented in the framework. But students are actually going to be taking primary sources and using those on the exam.
Structure of an AP exam is, even with the new one, is there's a multiple choice section. Followed then by several short answers that don't require, that basically you take what you've learned in your class and apply to those essays. And then the third type of question is what's called a document-based question, where they give you X number of documents, and you have to use those documents plus your own knowledge to answer the question. So that's a typical AP, both US and world history kind of question.
Well, and therein lies the problem. I mean, we haven't seen a test, a sample test, to know exactly what the expectation is of the teacher. I think we're drawing a lot of conclusions from this framework, which is a pretty comprehensive framework, if I'm not mistaken. I think the previous framework was how many pages?
I'm not sure.
5? Maybe 10 pages? This document is huge.
Mm-hmm.
And so.
And yet, it left all that stuff out.
And yet it left all of this out. I mean, it's obvious. I mean, anyone, especially with all due respect to Mr. Hayes, who served this country honorably, you know, I just can't imagine that anyone reading this who's been in the military would say, this is the country I chose to fight and die for. The tone of this is every non-white group is a victim of white oppression, and if you, I mean, our country has a very diverse history, and we've done some things that we're not proud of, but we've overcome a lot of those obstacles, and we continue to overcome those obstacles. And the message that we as a people, the American identity is sort of reduced to nothing but, you know, I can't recall I would be paraphrasing it, but, you know, the white privilege, you know, and if you look at, if you're going to take the AP test, and let's say the question had something to do with the Civil War, you know, if I were to argue on the humanitarian side of the issue, in other words, slavery as being inappropriate and trying to eradicate slavery, which was a noble cause and surely correct, but there were also states' rights issues, and a lot of the Civil War was prompted by discussion about states' rights. And so how is that going to be scored? If I argue states' rights and someone else argues the humanitarian side, in other words, slavery, who's going to score it, and how are they going to score it?
Well, first of all,
because I can provide documentation on both sides.
Fair question. And my answer to that would be this, that as long as the student using a primary or secondary source can back that opinion up, they are supposed to be scored based on their historical ability to use primary and secondary sources.
But if they have been presented with no secondary or primary sources that deal with states' rights, because that's not included in the framework, they're not going to know to do that. So again, it goes back to what are they going to be taught in that class, in that framework? And that framework, to me, is ultimately flawed. I mean, the Revolutionary War was like a minor disagreement with the British, according to that framework. You know, it makes no sense to me, and you're not going to be presented with excerpts or primary information if the slant or the idea is over here, that the framework is telling you to go. So.
Well, what grade level are we talking about? Who would be taking this, the AP history class?
Traditionally 11th grade.
Mostly 11th, but that has been opened up a little bit.
But now, what U.S. history would they have had prior to this, or is this their only exposure? Well, I'm not that familiar with the sequence.
Right.
Outside of AP, the current structure is US 1, US 2, 2 years of US history. part of the problem is our history, obviously, is that the curriculum has gotten so broad, and you've had to divide U.S. history into two parts. And when you look at this framework, if I have a concern with the framework, is its de-emphasis on early history and a primary more emphasis on 20th century, late 20th century history. So you can see that shift in this framework when you compare it to the old framework. They'd have been better off probably splitting AP into two courses like the state did with U.S. history in order to give both sets equal weight. So you see a real shift in this into a more 20th century focus on U.S. history. But that's just because of the nature and breadth of our history. But if you're taking the social studies course, not counting AP, you're going to take civics and economics. You're going to then probably take world history, or maybe world history first, civics next, and then US 1 and US 2.
Well, what does that cover when you say US 1? What time frame?
US 1 will cover from colonialism to Reconstruction, and then US 2 would be post-Reconstruction to modern day.
And unfortunately, we can't assume that these high school students have had any kind of foundation along the way, because social studies is not tested. And it goes...
We can set the prerequisite for an AP course. I mean, you could say that before you take AP US History, you had to have completed US 1, US 2, which would effectively make US a 12th grade course.
But again, that would be so contradictory to what we're seeing here.
Yes.
That, I can't imagine taking this course and having an understanding of U.S. I mean, this is so outside of the norm here, and this is the first test, the first framework that's being rewritten. I understand European history is going to be AP Euro history is going to be rewritten as well. So there's some real concerns here. But I also am wondering what authority we have as a Board of Education, because as I said, these are courses that are being taught by our teachers in our public schools, and what do we as a board have? Where does our authority end and the College Board's authority begin?
In terms of, as a board, you can establish the basic outline for the course, the course outline, the course briefing. What you can't do, obviously, is mandate what the test looks like at the end of the day when they go to a college board. You can say to any teacher who's teaching an AP course, those students are going to take the AP US test, but I want to make sure in this course you cover the following. So they understand they've got the test out there, but you can, as a board, mandate that within that framework there are certain parts or aspects of that course that are taught.
Well, I would be of the opinion, if we set as prerequisites U.S. History 1, U.S. History 2, my assumption is that in those two classes, and I'm saying my assumption, is not guided by any of this, that that would be history teachers like Mr. Hayes who would teach history as history.
Well, those would be the established North Carolina framework courses.
But would talk about the Pilgrims and talk about the French and Indian War and the Revolution and the Civil War and the War of 1812 and all. And again, I don't have a problem with the fact that they're getting away from memorizing specific dates or, specific documents. But I do want to make sure that, number one, it doesn't become, we talk about the environment, and I have a good idea what that section probably looks like. That we don't get into a situation that we are not allowing students to have an understanding of how this country developed, but rather it becomes a situation of telling them, this is what you need to believe about this country. And so I'm thinking that if we were, and that was my other question, is do we have to offer AP U.S. History? But if we keep it, to put a mandate that there are prerequisites, that you have to have had certain courses in order to take U.S. History, so you have an understanding of economics. What capitalism is all about, or civics, how government operates, or American History 1 and American history too, so that you don't walk into this class getting bombarded with things and you have no foundation. You have no foundation of understanding. I mean, that why capitalism is so much better than the communist ideas of society, or the whole concept of inequality of earnings and all that, that at least you have had an opportunity to develop your own ideas about it. So if we said, you know, I don't like this, but if we think that it's in the best interest for our students who are going to college to have it available to them, I would suggest that we do actually put some prerequisites, and I would suggest it be civics, economics, and history 1 and 2.
To me, this is dangerous territory to politicize a course and allow it to stand. That's what we're doing. We're allowing this to go through
allowing
and
the
saying it's
College Board
okay. I
to
mean,
have this
I
kind
think
of-
at the very least, we need to protest, send a message to the state that, our state representatives that this is not okay. I mean, we have to take it. I don't feel comfortable not offering AP, but at the same time, I feel very uncomfortable offering this. Excuse me, but it's garbage. And to just let it go and say we need to put some prerequisites in place and hope that the kids understand enough to be able to form their own opinions doesn't change the fact that this is slanted and it's politicized, and it shouldn't be. It should be about history, not about someone's idea on history.
Travis, these standards will not take effect until next year, correct?
No, it's this upcoming fall.
It's this year.
Upcoming fall.
Okay,
It's
so
this year.
They'll learn, these standards will be rolled out in their annual AP training in the fall, when we send our teachers to AP training.
Right, a lot of that training's already taken place.
And this training is the funding for this training is provided by whom?
As I understand it, different schools do different things.
But is this funding coming out of our budget, out of the school system's budget?
I honestly can't
professional
speak to
development?
that.
It is sometimes paid by Title II funds, training.
Do we have anybody who attended the social studies training?
Yes, I have contacted 2 teachers that have gone through the training in
What
our
kind of
district.
feedback are you getting from those teachers?
Neither teacher necessarily came to that conclusion, that this document was slanted.
Well, at the very least, we already have students who are, I assume, signed up to take this course at this point. And at the very least, I think, we have a policy against teaching controversial issues, and I can't imagine that this would not be considered controversial. And so I would very much appreciate us contacting our parents of children who have already signed up to take this course and giving them the framework and saying, are you comfortable with this? Because, if we cannot disallow it, then I want to give parents a heads up and let them know this is a very controversial framework that's rolled out. It's out of our hands, essentially, and we're not comfortable with it. So, and I also think we need to put some pressure on our State Board of Education because in reality, they're the ones who need to push back against the College Board. And, I don't understand why we can't, just use the previous year's tests and standards until we've had some time to review this, because this has been sort of pushed on us very rapidly and haven't had the opportunity to really, I spent a lot of time going through this, and I didn't feel that I had delved into it as deeply as I could have.
Sure, I think we're all there.
So I'd like to get the board's feedback on that.
I'd like to pass a resolution in opposition to this and send it up to Raleigh. Because again, like I said, I appreciate that the 2 teachers that we had maybe didn't voice their feelings that this is slanted, but I cannot read it any other way. You know, again, going through the list of who was not mentioned in the framework.
Who would have approved this? The state board? Would they be the ones that?
No,
it's- I mean, the state would approve it as a course you can offer. I mean, because they, at the end of the day, they list, these are the courses that we're offering, these are on the course catalog. But in terms of the AP exam, that's the college board.
Board, and that's SAT as well.
Well, and I think it bears
ACT,
noting, at least in a public forum, that David Coleman, who is now the president of the College Board, is also largely credited with having developed Common Core. And there's a lot of controversy around Common Core, and we've talked about it at length. And so I think this is an attempt to sort of circumvent our authority as a board, and the State Board of Education's authority, and our state education system, and you know, circumvent our efforts to ensure that the history curriculum is accurate. And you know, we don't have a lot of authority in terms of, other than disallowing the AP US History, but then we're kind of hamstringing our students who want to take this course and want to get a a leg up, so to speak.
Well, there is an alternative, and that is, I mean, you know, number one, they can take honors history. I know it's not AP, but and of course the other thing would be to making arrangements with Cape Fear Community College or UNCW to offer American history, you know, through one of those. But my thought is this: is that we can send all the resolutions we want to the state board and to the legislature and everything, and I don't think it will have much impact until schools start saying, we're not going to offer this class, and we're not going to, you know, get you a 50 or 75 or whatever they charge for giving the AP exam, and it starts hitting them that way, and somebody starts a ball rolling that other systems may pick up on. I don't really think anything's going to happen. And so my only thought is that if we want to send a message to the college board, we just decide that we're not going to offer AP history this year.
I'm actually fine with
I'm
it.
for
My
that.
kids wouldn't take it. I would not let my kids sign up for this class. And I would be fine with trying to offer something through the community college, which really serves the same purpose, actually.
Well, and yeah, I'm all for that.
And that would give them, and see, the thing is, that would give them college credit.
Mm-hmm.
You said AP history, don't you mean AP US history?
AP US history, okay. Because history is really about the only subject I can think of that you can manipulate. I mean, you can't manipulate science, you can't manipulate English, but you can.
I would tell you, the
Can't
AP history
manipulate
is one of our
science.
most, in terms of, for kids who take the course, it's probably the one that's taken the most by students. I'd almost go back to what is a letter to the parents saying, there's been a revision of the standards. We as a board have concerns over those revisions. And as a parent, let that parent make the choice whether their child takes that exam. Back to your original suggestion of at least a letter going home, this has been a revision of the standards, the board has reviewed those standards, they do have concerns, but since this is a national organization, not a state organization, we'll work with the company, but at this point they're not making changes, and taking the course then becomes the parent and child decision.
Can we work on putting something in place that would be an alternative offering where we would have US history, a college course, US history, offered where you didn't have to travel? I mean, you can do that now if you do dual enrollment. But, you know, we used to offer the Huskins classes. Could we do something like that?
US history is not one of the community college courses now that would fit in terms of the dual enrollment piece. So, because they've restricted that list. It used to be you could take anything you wanted at community college, but most of those, correct me if I'm wrong, LaShawn, are real CTE kind of courses. I'll double check that. But I really like putting the decision back in the parents' hand. Let them know you as a board have a concern about this, then it becomes their decision as to whether to take this course.
Well, I think we need to do that in concert with some additional
Like an option
efforts.
that they would have.
Right. Well,
Provide
no,
them another options that we would.
right. Well, no. Yes. What I'm referring to is some sort of push on our state board. Whether that, I like Mr. Higgins' idea. I think, I'm all for it. I don't know that the board has the will to do that, for pulling the AP all together, but, I do think it needs to be a very vocal opposition, because I think if most parents, and again, Lisa and Derek and I, and, we're all parents, but, my children are still in school. I was so, I had such a visceral reaction to this AP course. I could not believe what I was reading. And I think most parents would have a problem with this if they were to read this. And we have as a board have a responsibility to ensure that the education they're receiving is accurate. And this is not accurate. This is flawed.
Yeah, just to chime in a little bit, and so far I've agreed with everything Mr. Higgins has said this evening. But just to reiterate one of the things he said, I think I would like to see it at the very least, as Dr. Markley suggested and Mr. Higgins talked about, is requiring students to take U.S. History 1 and U.S. History 2 before they'd be allowed to take this class. Because, let's hope that we're teaching our students not only facts, but teaching them how to think. Let's hope. And so let's hope that once we give our students the facts, if they are presented with something that is somewhat biased, they're able to push back with some knowledge that they've received in a previous class. As an example, one of my favorite newspapers, because I just like the way it's written, is the New York Times. But when I read the New York Times, some people, myself included, tend to think tends to be a little bit biased. But I can pick out the portions of the articles which are factual and which may have an author's bias in it, and it's still very well written. So, let's hope that we're teaching our students to, think along those lines. So, I guess one of the things we can do is require them to take US 1 and 2 before they take this class, and hopefully if it's, if they're being presented with biased things, they can just say, hey, but the speech given by Lincoln, at Gettysburg said this, and I learned in U.S. history, would that be 2, I guess? Reconstruction, so U.S. history 1. Yeah, I learned that this was why, or, some people say this is why this happened, So I think we can do that, and I think I wouldn't be against sending a letter to parents expressing our concerns, and then again to reiterate what Ms. Estep said, I would be against having a resolution to the state board just saying that, we've reviewed this and come up with these concerns. We ask them to look more deeply into it. And then lastly, this is the first year it's given, but at the end of this year, we will then have an opportunity to look at the questions that were asked. And I think, at that point, we can very clearly as a board say, okay, this is what the test was, and we think that this was a completely biased examination. And if that's what we see and find, then I think we'd be on solid ground not to offer the course at that point, if it's that way. Otherwise, maybe we'll be pleasantly surprised.
Hey, may I add a couple things?
Yeah.
Yes, I wanted just a small corrections here. The 2 U.S. history courses is actually called American 1 and American 2. Okay. So just FYI. And they are tested. There is an NC exam after the 8th grade course, which is an NC U.S. history course combined. There's an NC exam for that, and there's an NC exam for the civics, the world history, the American 1, and the American 2. And the vast amount of our students will take American 1 and 2 before they enter AP. Now, with that said, they did allow, just recently, within the last year or two, they have allowed students now to take the College Board AP U.S. History, and that will take the place of American 1 and 2. So they have just opened the door for that, and again, that was a couple of years ago.
But as
The
a
timing
district, we
seems
can
very
have
suspicious.
Yeah.
as a district, you can have you can put a prerequisite in place.
So they're saying, did you just say that they opened the door there by saying that if they wanted to take the AP US history, the other two would not be required?
Yes,
So
sir.
they would have nothing of our founding fathers, the early settlement of this country, the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, all of these things that Ms. Eastep alluded to, they would have none of that whatsoever then?
Well, certainly they would get that in 8th grade. But then secondly, I think if we had a College Board representative here, I think they would probably disagree. They would say the founding fathers would certainly be part of this. And I think that objective would probably highlight that.
But I didn't see them mentioned in those 142 pages.
Right. One of the reasons too, in reading in the intro, that some of these names weren't mentioned specifically is because they said any of the example names they were not going to put on the exam, because what they found under the old standards is when they listed anything, the teachers just automatically went and pushed that, thinking that was going to be on the exam. So some of the examples they left off. That's why Martin Luther King Jr. is not in there, because there's a very good chance that's going to be on the exam. So
we wouldn't know till the end of this year what the exam looks like. But how about the book that they would be using?
The district actually chooses the book.
Right.
Traditionally, it was Pageant's U.S. History was been the typical AP U.S. History book.
So are we adopting a new series to go with this?
And you don't really adopt an AP book. The teacher chooses the book that they use for that class.
Ooh, and who guides the teacher?
Hopefully Travis is guiding her
well,
teacher.
and the state standards,
I feel sorry for
as
Travis.
well as the AP standards.
Now he's giving us a reason to shoot Travis.
That's a little scary in the sense that what you just said as far as the two others not being required if you take this one.
But we can require it.
But we can
Right.
require them.
Yeah. And I think we should.
But for the students who are signing up or who have signed up for this year, we can't go back and say,
At this point, school's 2 weeks out. So you sending the letter to anybody who signed up for AP US History is doable right now. Changing the requirements with this close to school would be very difficult.
yeah.
So, I mean, you can take the action of telling the state board you have concerns. You can take the action of telling parents that there are new standards and you need to look at those standards prior to letting your child take that course. But any standards, any prerequisite piece really is sort of probably a 2015 change as opposed to a 2014 change.
Mr. Hayes, why is your name next to this item?
But it came to the board, that's why.
He's
Yeah,
a history
several
expert.
board members.
No, I was just wondering.
Oh, no. Several board members had expressed concerns, and I called and wanted it on the agenda
Okay.
so that the board would have ample time to discuss their concerns, and then the board as a whole to come up with a plan. So
You've also got, by waiting until, we'll have a little more detail on the test and hopefully be able to get some more material to take a look at before we go in and change a prerequisite before next year.
Right.
So the short steps, if you've got concerns about this, is one, is a letter to the parents. You've signed up for this, but there have been major curriculum changes, the board has concerns. Please go to this website and review those changes for yourself, and then you can address them with the state board as well.
Who's going to write the letter from the board?
Obviously, we'll help you draft it.
well, but suppose the parent is concerned, what would their option be at that point?
Then they can withdraw the student from U.S. History, the AP U.S. History class. And we'll try to give them another AP option.
Will that be stated in the letter? I think it needs to be stated in the
Well,
letter.
we've got a meeting on the 19th. We can have a draft letter for you by the 19th.
Is that gonna cause a scheduling problem? Because I see Mr. O'Brien out there. I don't know if that would cause a scheduling problem at the high schools at this point in time, if all of a sudden people started changing.
Most kids that are taking AP US are probably just signed up for that, and probably not another American history course. Another thing to consider is that we still teach civics in the 10th grade, which does cover Constitution, Bill of Rights, I think some of those things. In addition to that, the state does now require with the current junior class, those students who have to have an additional history beyond what was required
would tell you, even with the letter, I would anticipate that the folks who actually withdraw from US history because, AP US because of standards, won't be that high a number, because kids want the AP course for college admissions. So I understand your concerns, but I think the number who actually who would use this as a reason to withdraw would be a very small number.
Well, and if nothing else, maybe it will at least get the conversation rolling at home about this and the framework.
I agree, but I do have concerns about the fact that we're bending over backwards to work around the College Board, and, you know,
Maybe a
that
letter
bothers
to the
me a little
College
bit.
Board.
Let's write a letter to the
That's
College
right.
Board. I'm perfectly fine doing that as well.
Well, didn't it say in there with, maybe I'm getting something mixed up, Texas also had some tremendous problems with this, and
I
they
think
maybe were
Mercer-
not going to, which would affect the testing and so forth, which would
They're
put a
looking into
damper
it.
on this.
Yes, sir.
Is that still ongoing?
I haven't heard an update. The original article that I read online just said that they were at least debating possibly not offering the course.
But then the person that brought it up, I think, Ken Mercer, was told he could not put it on the agenda until September, which would be too late. So I think at this point, they still have it, but the discussion is ongoing.
Again, you gotta wonder if there's nothing to this, if it's just,
Well, why'd they sneak it in?
why sneak it in, and why not provide the sample tests so that we can review them, and this will be a non-issue. It's just, where there's smoke, there's fire. This is extremely concerning to me.
So what are we gonna do? Do we have to vote on
Well,
it?
so the teachers do not have the sample or the exam yet as to what the exam would look like?
That's my understanding, yes, sir, other than what's been released.
Is that normal? Is that a normal,
For a new test,
For a new test, yes.
then once they give the test, that old test becomes a sample for the following year. Because they use, they read different tests every year.
So what you're saying is the framework then is the expectation of the coursework. I mean, obviously, if there's no test that exists, the framework is what all the teacher has to go on. It's
And
just-
they may develop, you've seen some sample questions, and they may have a sample, some version of a sample test, but at this point, framework is the primary document that we've got to review this course.
well, could we send them a letter stating that we're contemplating not offering this? We'd like to see a copy of a sample test that would be forthcoming. Would that be possible, that they would have something that they could send us?
I doubt they care.
Right.
You're probably right, Ms. Diggins.
Travis, did you want to say something?
Well, I am not defending, this course or anything like that.
No, we understand.
Other than say this, as far as the testing samples, they do have quite a bit. I mean, there's 19 multiple choice questions, and there's several examples of the other ones, except for the long essay, there's only one example of that. But I have noticed most of the questions allow students to take either position. In fact, they encourage it on the short answer. This example here, the robber baron / capitalist, depending on your perspective, they ask the students, one, defend this cartoon. Defend the author's perspective of this cartoon. But then the very next question asks, challenge the author's perspective in this cartoon. So I guess one thing, I think thinking skills, that is the thing this College Board is really trying to push regarding these new standards. So they
Yeah,
are asking students to kind of think both ways.
Agreed, but the framework is not balanced. If you're going to require a student to take a position, you have to present both sides of the issue, and that is not provided in this framework. It's very obvious. I mean, I don't know how I can say it any better. It is just so slanted, and as Dawn said, I don't know how a child can go through this course and not at the end of it feel depressed, ashamed of our country, ashamed of who we are and where we came from. I just, you know, if you're going to require them to present both sides, you have to present both sides in the instruction, and that is not here. So that's, you know, again, I'm not blaming you, and I'm not directing
Not
my,
taking it
you know,
personally at all.
frustration towards
Yes,
you.
ma'am.
I'm just saying that is not in this framework, and again, I've read through almost every bit of it. So, what are our plans at this point?
Well, we could, as Dr. Markley stated, we could send a letter. We do have an interim meeting 2 weeks from tonight. Do you want to use that time to formulate a resolution of some type or whatever? Because I think it's too late this year with the course offerings to do any major changes now, but I think we need to let the appropriate entities, whoever we determine they are, know that we're very unhappy with this, and I don't know what else we can do as a board except not to
So,
offer it.
Well, Dr. Markley, will you help us draft a letter to the parents to,
Today's Tuesday, I probably have something to you by Friday, a draft that we can discuss.
A vigorous letter,
And what?
vigorous letter.
well, we'll have an opportunity to tweak it, so, but I do think parents need to be aware of this.
Are we
And-
in agreement that we'll also do a resolution to the state?
Yes.
Who's gonna-
Anyone not in agreement with that?
And we need to
Willard, do you want to do that?
And as Dr. Hickey suggested, well, I don't know, can we still change the requirements?
That's something we can look at over the course of the year before we put out the course catalog for next year.
Okay.
But we need to send the communication to the college board as well. They need
Correct.
to know.
Mhm. Copy them on the resolution.
So we'll get a copy of the letter by Friday, and then at our interim meeting,
We can
Mr.
work
Bull will
on
have a
the
resolution ready
resolution.
and so forth.
I'd be happy to draft it for you.
And then you want to send it to Mr. Bullard, Ms. Copeland?
I will send it to you,
Okay.
Mr. Bullard.
Sounds good.
Yeah, that's good, yeah. Okay, anything else on item C?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No blood.
Still standing.
We still love you.
There's no basket being transmitted with the head in the basket. It's, you know, Braveheart, some of these programs, you know. Okay, item D, change of school assignment, appendix F, Dr. Holliday.
Yes, sir, this one should be quite simple. These are students whose parents work for surrounding systems, and this is just a routine release, sir. I recommend that you approve.
Move for approval.
Second.
Comments, questions? Those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's approved. Item 9, superintendent's report. Item A, budget update, appendix R, Dr. Markley.
All right, I'm going to run through the state budget fairly quickly. Mary Hazel will answer all difficult questions. My job is to stand here and read slides.
After, let me see where the figure
All right, there's a new salary schedule that was approved that is an average of 7%. That does not mean that every teacher got a 7% raise. And that'll be an explanation that we'll have to make sure folks understand. The scale is heavily weighted to those at the front end of the scale, the 0 to 9 years. Example, I think at 9 years, it's an 18.5% increase. The rationale, as my understanding, is that they wanted to increase the front end of the scale to bring folks into the profession. So on average, it's just over 7%, but that range could be anywhere from as little as 0.3% for somebody with 30 years to 18% for somebody at the front end of the scale. I have a concern to the message that sends to our veteran teachers, but at the end of the day, the state is the one who adopts that.
Let me ask you a question about that. You had sent an email out that not only did it do percentages, but it also showed sort of absolute dollars.
Yes.
And, you know, if I'm recalling most of that, there were a couple of categories where I would agree for some reason that they just seemed not to give the teachers in that range any reasonable amount of an increase.
Mm-hmm.
But actually, kind of at the two extremes, unless I'm mistaken, I was trying to pull up your email here and it just wouldn't pull up. A bunch of other ones pulled up. It would almost look like they all got about $2,300 or something, or $2,000.
Yeah,
And
but
of course,
some of them got, and that's when the next piece comes in, they got their longevity. Now, every year a teacher got longevity in a lump sum. But what they've done now is they've done away with the lump sum longevity and rolled that into teacher pay. They didn't do it for any other category of employee, just for teachers. So it looked like in some of it where they may have gotten a jump in pay, but what they really got was their longevity and a very tiny increase on that.
So, I'm sorry, Dr. Markley.
Yeah.
Explain the longevity piece. Are you saying the step increases on an annual basis? No.
You've got the step increases. Every year you hear you go up 1 or 2 percentage points. But the state also rewards service overall. So if you've been with us 10 years, because that's the minimum number for longevity, you would get on your anniversary month, the month you started, a check for, I think it's 1.5% at 10 years, 2.2% at 20 years. And so that would be a bonus check for that, for your years of service to the state. So what they did with this schedule is, instead of giving you that lump sum bonus, they split that out into your regular paycheck. So those teachers didn't see an increase in their overall amount they got every year, but they saw it spread out now every month. So it looks like for some of our teachers at the top end that their monthly got larger, but in reality it was money they were already getting spread out over those 10 months.
okay, so it's money they were expecting to get
Yes.
as an increase.
Right.
Because to people who are unaccustomed to the concept of longevity pay, you know, what it looked like was that you gave someone with a very low salary, an entry-level teacher, $2,000, and that was 7% of their salary. And then you gave a veteran teacher, you know, $2,000, and it came out to be a far lower percentage. But so that's what those are the complaints we're hearing about longevity pay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they receive that every year, like year 10, 11, 12?
Correct.
Every year,
Once
up
you,
to 20.
once you hit that certain point, that becomes an annual bonus on that anniversary year.
It's
But
a
for teachers,
bonus?
that's no longer in place. That's been rolled into their salary schedule.
But that's not just with teachers. Every state employee is in that system. Judges.
You gonna pull the chart up for them?
I'm just gonna try to add a little bit.
Are you, you're not doing a good job, Dr. Markley.
He's doing a great job, but just a little more information.
Little more clarification, okay.
From this point forward, longevity will be, like you said, incorporated in the teacher pay scale. For everybody else, it'll still be separate. But these percentage raises were sort of over and above the longevity, but some of those early schedules they released were confusing. Yep. As soon as the state releases the pay scales and they're putting them together, we sort of had the rates in the law, but they have to sort of apply them to all the different pay scales for masters and bachelors and all that. As soon as that is released, we will share that with all employees and the board.
But the chart that Dr. Hickey saw, it looked like a 30-year person got an extra $2,000 a month, but really what they were getting was they were showing what their pay was plus longevity.
And then they're going to get another 0.29%.
0.29%.
Yeah, so it's less than 0.5%. Yep. And that's all they're getting. They also won't even be eligible. There's a $1,000 bonus at the top of the scale if people aren't getting a raise. So everybody over 30 years is not getting any of these percentages. They're just going to get a $100 bonus each month this year.
So, but longevity is in place for all other categories of state employees. So that would be teacher assistants, state workers for the state government as well. Teachers with master's pay and national boards will still receive those supplements, but anybody now who doesn't have that will not get that. Also, if you're hired and you don't have tenure, tenure is no longer something we are going to award teachers. It's like they did with principals when they converted principals from tenure to non-tenure. If you got it, you keep it, but if you don't, it's gone. The master's pay is bachelor's plus 10%. There is a slight change. The national board pay, they used to pay, it's a 12%, but if you had a master's, it used to be 12% of your base plus master's. Now it's just 12% of a bachelor's pay going forward. For school administrators, 2% pay increase. Those at the top of the scale not receiving a salary increase get a one-time bonus of $809. No change in longevity rates for administrators. Non-certified central office folks, it's an addition, it's a $500 that'll be added to their annual salary at the rate of about $50 per month. That is different, and this is something that, if you read the legislation, it says all state employees get $1,000 unless otherwise noted. Well, otherwise noted are educational employees. So for some of our folks, that's going to be confusing. They're going to hear that state employees, non-teacher state employees got $1,000, but in reality, non-state educational employees got the $500. So you may hear some confusion about that. But it's in two separate places in the actual legislative bill. We'll adjust the hourly rates to reflect that increase as well. No change in longevity rates for those employees. Some salary and benefit changes. They changed the rules for master's pay. Basically, if you're in a master's program now, they will pay you for that once you complete that program. But if you have not started a master's program, you will not get paid on that in the future. The exception is if you transfer from out of state and you were getting paid for a master's pay as a teacher in another state, we would honor that coming here. So the same rules that apply to our folks in North Carolina would apply to out-of-state folks who we hire. The following areas that are eligible for a master's degree: instructional support for which a master's is required. Teachers instruction support are paid on an advanced degree prior to that date, and the grandfathers in those folks we talked about. So unless your actual program calls for a master's degree, you will not get paid on a master's schedule anymore. The new retirement matching is going to be 15.21. That's the district portion. The employee portion is still the 6% that it has been. Our health insurance matching rate is 53.78. Those are both in line with about what we anticipated they would be during the budget process. In the past, they've done bonus days. They did bonus days for everybody except educational employees.
I'm sorry, Dr. Markley.
Yeah.
What was the previous retirement matching rate? Do you recall?
It was,
14?
14.69.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the health insurance rate, I think, is about the same.
It changed to this at actually 53.77 since January.
Is that a percentage, or is that
That's a dollar amount.
It's a dollar amount. Okay.
Last year, it changed mid-year, so last year's budget was half at the old rate and half at the new rate, and so this is pretty much in line with what we've been doing since January.
Okay. And this is an average, or is that per employee?
Per employee.
Okay. That's a dollar amount.
That's
Okay.
the dollar amount.
So, some of this, I'm sorry.
I know.
Some of it's so convoluted. It's hard to wrap your brain around it at times.
Health insurance summary, earned by full-time, you've got to work at least 30 hours. Employee portion ranges from $0 to $64 a month, depending upon the coverage selected. The employer portion is the 53.78 that we talked about. Permanent part-time employees may purchase coverage with no employer contribution. So the health insurance summary, family coverage eligible employees may also purchase family coverage and pay the full cost of coverage. So we cover the individual but not the family. The budget also includes some provisions for state health plans to develop alternate health benefits for non-permanent full-time employees. We'll provide minimum coverage as required by ACA. The retirement contribution, 6% required employee contribution for full-time, 15.21 for the district match, and the prior year's rate was 14.69.
And at what point is an employee fully vested in how long do they have to work for the system in order to?
It was, at one point it was 5, then it was 10, and now I think we're back to 5 with the new piece.
Kind of depends on when you were hired. I need to look that up.
I thought it went, it's when you were hired. I think it went back to 5.
Yeah, it was 5, then 10, and now it's back to 5.
Okay, so after 5 years, then you, 5 years, then
Yes.
you're fully vested. Okay.
But that doesn't mean you would get it, if you only had 5 years of service, you would not get full retirement with just those 5.
Right, that's, yeah.
Other changes, and this is one that's gonna, if you listen to the press, they funded class size reduction and did not cut TAs. But really what they did is they're forcing you to make a choice. You can either keep the TAs you've got or reduce class size. Because they shifted, what they did is they shifted funding to teachers that last year was TA funding. And so they've told districts, make a choice. Keep your TAs or you can hire some additional teachers. That's the short version of it. And the reason why they did it, if you want the backstory, a lot of districts were converting TA dollars to teachers anyways. And so they basically said, we're going to simply allocate those dollars that those districts converted to teachers. And then if a district wants to convert them back to TAs, they can do that. Now the conversion rate is about 2 TAs per teacher, a little bit less than that. And so what I'm proposing, or what I just need you to understand in terms of us going forward, we've already got our TAs in place. And so for this year, we're gonna maintain that TA allotment that we've had in the past. And then as they attrit out, we will not replace them. And then those will convert to teacher positions heading into next year's budget cycle. That becomes part of that discussion next year for the budget.
But weren't the TAs at different grade levels? There were TAs, and then it was like then it became optional.
Well, the state gives you TAs based on those early, based on numbers at your early grade levels, but there's no requirement that you would use them exactly as that. So our TAs often, and more often than not, are covering multiple grades. They may spend some time in kindergarten. They may be up in 4th grade doing interventions one day. They've gotten very flexible as the TAs numbers have dwindled. It's no longer one teacher, one TA all the time.
But is it a significant reduction that we would be giving up to keep the TAs? I mean, I wouldn't think so.
The state formula,
Class size.
you know, they keep saying that we have funded up until this year K3 TAs, and they haven't. The formula didn't even fund K1, you know, based on what they were giving us per K3 student. It was just based on the K3 student count. And so currently we have like a class size average in kindergarten and 1st grade is like 20 or 21, but we were given TAs at 1 to 23. So it really wasn't even covering it. And now with this, we're losing 50 TA positions, gaining 26. It's not quite a wash though. The state made it sound like it was a wash, but it certainly isn't for us. So we're gonna have to put a little local money in there to cover it at least for this year so that we wouldn't have to do a RIF this year.
I mean, schools have already gotten their allotment based on the planning projections from the state and the formulas then, and the ones that we outlined in our budget process last year. So what we're, like I said, what we're gonna do or recommend to do is keep our current TA positions and then just fund those for the remainder of this year, and then as they retire or leave, not fill those positions.
But with the 26 new teaching positions, what is that? Evidently, that's going to lower class size.
It could if you did that instead of TAs.
Right, but you're saying that's what we're going to do, right?
No.
This year we're not.
The
But
budget,
next year.
Right, next year we would look at those, as those TA positions free up, convert those to teaching positions, back to teaching positions.
But okay, but my point is, but what's that going to do to class size? Is it worth it, 1 or 2 students per class, to remove the TA?
And that's a decision we can talk about as we do our budget process next year.
Yeah, because
Assuming they fund us at the same level that they're doing here.
You know, I think the TA is very important to.
Okay, I'm not following too. I'm confused, so, sorry.
In simple terms, the state said, we're gonna give you 26 teaching positions above what we said we were gonna give you back in January when they handed the planning allotment. The problem becomes, is those were dollars that we were really using for TAs. So if we wanna keep our current TA allotments, we say thank you for the 26 extra positions, but we're turning them back into TAs that we already had.
Okay, and we're short $500,000.
And one of the
The
reasons.
dollar conversion doesn't work 1-for-1.
Because the transfer, as teachers, they're worth sort of the average salary of a teacher. Because remember, we've talked about before how the state, you know, will pay the full cost of the teacher. Once we convert it, it loses value. And so when we convert it, it was transferring out at, I guess, grade 6, which last year was really beginning teacher pay, because a 6-year teacher made the same thing as beginning teacher. So we haven't seen the transfer formula yet. Our guess is, though, it would be the value of a beginning teacher. So it's not worth as much, so it doesn't really cover it. It looks like it covers the way they did the budgeting, but when we transfer it out, it won't be worth as much. So one of the things that we're asking you to do is let us do this transfer through local, so we can still maximize the state positions. And hopefully, once we see, you know, actual value of the, calculate everybody's salary under the new pay scales, hopefully it won't cost us an additional $500,000. I had to just assume on averages. So once we know the actual cost, I could come back to you, and the 500 is the most it could cost. Hopefully it'll be much less, and we won't actually spend the fund balance. It's just a matter of, you know, if you don't want to do a RIF right now until we know the actual cost, you know, we need to recommend that fund balance appropriation. I'll have better numbers for you at your next meeting, but this just came out over the weekend, so we hadn't had a chance to calculate everything.
So questions there? They gave us 29 extra teachers. We're going to convert them back to TAs, but the conversion is not a straight dollar-for-dollar conversion. So our proposal is no existing TAs will be eliminated, but any vacancy that occurs after the first of the year, we would not replace. We think the maximum it would run is the 500,000, but in reality, we anticipate it'll be much less than that, and still within our policies around fund balance. Other state budget changes, they increased textbooks 66 cents. I'm not sure what you can buy for a 66-cent textbook, but we'll take the 66 cents per pupil.
I think it's
Maybe
62,
Travis
isn't
can comment.
it?
62, excuse me. That's even less.
What kind of book can we
No,
get,
they're checking
Travis?
your math. All right, this is one that's gonna, this next one, folks, is, it's not a this year issue, but we gotta be thinking about next year. No changes to driver's ed for 2014-15. Next year, the budget says they eliminate driver's ed funding. But you can charge $65 per driver's ed student. Guys, I cannot run the driver's ed program on $65 a head. So we're going to have to spend some time thinking about what we're going to do with driver's ed next year. It's going to, if this holds, and let's face it, when we get back in the long session, I think it'll change. But just need to be thinking about what the impact of that will be on us for our driver's ed program next year.
What do you estimate it costs per student to run driver's ed? Just an estimate.
I can respond. I asked Mrs. Morris the other day, we were looking at this issue, and it will be anywhere between $375 and $400 is what the estimated cost per child in driver's ed would be.
And are we mandated to offer driver's ed?
Yes, sir. That's a very good question, because our first thought was, if we don't have the money and it's not funded, then how can we offer it? And the response we're getting from the state is it's a mandate.
So what we're looking at is, and there's just some quick thoughts. You may have to force everybody to do the coursework online, on their own, and then we would do the driver's portion. I still don't think we can do it for the amount that's budgeted here.
How many people do we serve a year?
I didn't hear your question,
How
Ms.
How many
Campbell.
people do we serve a year?
I can find that out for you. It's a very good number of
It would
children.
be in the thousands.
Yeah, it's a large number of students, because the private providers charge basically what I just said. They charge roughly between $350 and $400 a piece. And so the bulk of our children, and also some children from private schools and homeschools, also access our driver's ed program because the law allows that one course.
So this is going to be potential to be a huge issue heading into next year. This is one when we talk about legislative priorities and talking to our legislators, we'll have to push up to the front of the list.
I mean, but I guess the other question is, why does it cost so much? I mean, it seems like that's a lot of money that's costing us. I mean, I don't understand why it costs that much.
The cost is primarily in the driver's education teacher.
Well, yeah, that's also a good question. The cost is, we have to purchase and maintain the vehicles. And they stay in service for a certain period of time. You have to pay the teachers, and all the course materials. And that's pretty much gets you.
Does our liability insurance cover?
Ma'am?
Does our liability insurance cover?
Yes, ma'am.
The course as well?
Yes, ma'am.
We charge the program their portion. Okay.
Whatever happened, and I know, again, this is several years ago. We used to have the basics of driver's training. It was in a trailer with a video, and they had these mocked up cars. I mean, it was like a simulator.
That was before my time, sir.
Well,
I think that's the first time I've heard that in my 4 years here.
Did you have to crank
Now,
the car?
I will tell you, I will tell you what.
I may be dating myself,
You
but
said to say
in
giddy up.
1963 or 4.
Rick has never said that was before my time until tonight.
Well, I know what you're talking about because we had exactly what you're talking about at East Carolina when we took the driver's ed course at East Carolina to learn how to teach driver's ed. They had exactly what you're talking about. But also what we had in New Hanover County was where the football stadium is at Hoggard now was a big old, what became a parking lot. But at one time, that was the driver's ed range. And they had a tower. Mr. Hayes, you might remember this. They had a tower, and they had a driver's ed instructor in the tower, and students were in the cars. And the driver's ed, you turn it to a, okay, I'm just telling you.
These were bumper cars they borrowed.
No,
from
these
Carolina
were
Beach.
real
They got 'em
cars,
from the beach.
and you tune to a certain AM radio station, and the radio frequency was over that, and they would direct the traffic
They'd
from
scream
the
at
tower.
you from the tower?
So, yeah, we've done some, I mean,
Well, I mean, you know, the only reason I asked that is because.
only cost one instructor, you had everybody else driving around in cars.
Well, no, we did not have the tower, but I'm just, you know, you talk about thinking outside the box. I mean, I'm just asking, and when you said something about doing it online, I mean, the thought is that the big cost, as I see it, is the number of hours that students spend in a car, 3 of them in a car with an instructor, riding around Wilmington and this, that, and the other. I mean, I think we had maybe 2 actual driving experience. May have had 3, but I mean, we didn't have a whole lot. I didn't have as many as my daughter had when she took driver's education. But we had already been exposed. And of course, this was, again, to show you how old this was, you had to learn how to drive a stick.
Oh, my God. That's
And
important.
So, you know, I mean, well, yeah. it
You
was
also had to give
important.
hand signals.
That's right.
Yeah.
No, we had turn signals.
Oh.
Oh, my.
And they had this machine in the back that recorded what every site was, every one of them was doing. You know, I mean, you know, if you missed or you were driving too fast.
This is what you call
Can I
history.
bring us back to
history in
Yeah,
action.
so,
Well,
Dr. Mark,
hey, it sounds like it's a lot better than what we got now.
years ago, yeah.
do
Well-
we have an online course available?
The state is
for-
actually working on an online course for driver's ed.
Okay, so they could take
I see
they could take the course portion, and then the driving portion would be separate
Right,
from.
but in terms of cost, I mean, the teacher in front of currently, most driver's ed classes run 30-plus kids. That's the cost, that's the most cost-effective part of the whole operation. It's when, as Mr. Higgins said, it's the car and those 3
Yeah.
students on that per-hour cost that really drive those costs. Now, the state does say we can charge up to $55 right now. We're gonna raise our fee starting this fall to $55 and use any extra funds and bank them to help us offset any potential cost next year.
What about the students that can't afford the $55? What do we do there? Do they not get to take the course?
It's $55.
That's good. I
We don't do any waivers.
Yeah, there's no, right now, we're charging 25, and it's just 25.
So with board permission, we're gonna run that fee up to the 55, because we anticipate our costs will
Yeah, what-
exceed next
Yeah,
year.
what we wanna do is bank that money so that every little bit helps until we can determine how we're gonna do this.
And like I said, I hope that when they come back in the long session, that they figure this out and we see some changes. But again, you've got a plan for us.
I hope we explore also this whole concept of some online.
We will look at online. We may look at large classrooms where it's a lecture of 1 teacher and maybe 100 kids taking the classroom portion. Uh,
I
we're-
think Ed ought to be the board designee to come up with a program.
I still like the
I want
idea
them
of
old
the,
trailers, I mean,
of the parking lot with the,
and I want the old
Tower.
trailer, I like the old trailer, that was cool.
All right. Can I move off of driver's ed? Please.
Please.
All right, other state budget reductions, 1% to transportation statewide, that equates to $63,000 for us. 2% to central office, that works out to $34,000 for us. A 3% reduction in at-risk services, that's $137,000. That reduction, if you looked at last year's budget when they passed it, they were gonna increase the at-risk budget. What they did is they simply just held the funding level and cut the increase, which was the 3%. So there's no less dollars in at-risk, but there's no increase. And then digital learning is eliminated, and that one concerns me because that was one of the few sources we had for technology funds. All right, so the local impact. State raises for locally paid teachers will be $1.2 million. Increased cost for our supplement is $400,000. School administrator pay increase is $50,000. State raises for other locally paid is $210,000. Retirement rate contribution increase is $174,000. So the subtotal of the local impact increase is just over $2 million.
Is that 2 million we did not count on?
We counted on a portion of it, 1.7, but that'll be on the next slide after this one.
Oh, okay.
Local impact state dollars also be the $500,000 we're looking at for teacher assistants, 2% reduction in central office, a 3% for the at-risk. So a subtotal reduction of 617 for a total local impact of 2.75 million.
That's
So we
worse,
look at our-
that's worse than we anticipated going into this.
We are anticipating, we knew teachers were gonna get a raise. We went in thinking somewhere in the 3 to 5% range. We thought was gonna be the high end. So an average of 7% was well above our projections. And that's what's driving that. So you look at our local funding, salary and retirement contribution reserve, supplemental reserve, some longevity savings, transportation budget savings, fund balance appropriations. So our total local sources to get us to the 2.75 million. Anything you want to add to that?
Just a couple of things that we won't know for sure until we get the initial allotment. Like Dr. Horsley said about the Program 69, I'm assuming the 3% cut, because that's what they told us to plan on, based on the planning allotment. If it turns out that it's less than that, we'll certainly, adjust these. I'll have that before we bring this to you for actual approval of an amendment at your next meeting. So some of these are estimates until we see the initial allotment. So hopefully it'll look a little better, but these are close.
Yep. So the fund balance appropriation of the 451 will still keep us within our board policies on fund balance. Folks, I cannot say enough good things about what our finance department does in terms of managing our dollars. That with our budget committee process, we are a very fiscally conservative district, and we're able to work within this and use those reserves to help us in these times. I don't know what some of the small counties do that aren't able to carry a fund balance or have somebody who manages the funds like we do. So we can weather these because of our fiscal policies and our staff folks managing those funds. But again, some of our smaller counties, this 7% increase is going to kill them.
And most of the salary increase that hits the local budget, if you're fortunate enough to have local employees, they're generally the people at the bottom of the scale, and they're the ones that got the really big increases. So, local budgets are looking at, the 15, 18% increases as opposed to the 7. So that's part of why that number's so large.
The state pays for teachers, and we have some teachers beyond our state allotment, and we've always put our least experienced teachers in the local fund because the cost was, it's cheaper to pay a first-year teacher than a 30-year teacher, so we let the state pay for them. And as Mary Hazel said, it saves us money overall, but in this short term, that big bump is where that is hit those folks the most. So tonight, just consensus that on our decision to use those extra teaching positions to maintain our current TAs. All right. Next meeting will be local budget changes to include any budget amendments. We'll have a salary scale adjustment, and we'll be able to look at those, and we'll have a much more accurate dollar figure on the fund balance appropriation. And you want to explain the retro payments in September?
That was just in case we get questions from teachers. You know, this is a July 1st budget. We actually have some 12-month employees where the raises went into effect in July. So we paid July and at the old rates. We will be paying anything owed for July for summer school for teachers or anything. We will adjust that so that they'll get that in September. Also, under the longevity, teachers had earned some longevity up through June 30th that we hadn't paid yet because we used to pay it once a year. We'll also pay any longevity earned last year under the old rules. We'll pay that in September. Just thought you might get those questions, so that I just wanted to make sure the board was aware of our schedule.
All right, questions on the budget?
Thanks for all the hard work.
It's for you. I forget to give it to you except for when I'm at the meeting.
See, Ms. Kavanaugh's doing her share for the budget.
She's doing her part.
Was that
That check's about $1 million, we're good.
Stop.
She
All right.
had 4 in it.
Was that it, Dr. Markley, then?
Yeah, that's enough damage for one night.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Next item, item 10, under consensus items, item A, personnel, appendix G, Dr. Wilmers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Request the board approve the personnel matters as presented.
Move for approval.
Second.
Comments, questions? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's approved. We have no old business, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, before we do item 12, we've been asked to take a 5-minute break, so this time we will take our 5-minute break.